I think that they're doing their due diligence. You get 45 formal interview visits at the combine, and then you have 30 visits after that. The 30 visits are the most important. That's when they come to Santa Clara and work out and talk to everybody and talk to the coaches. But you start the conversation at Indy with these interviews. So we have to say, all right, so where are they looking? One of the keys in looking at the visits, and Steph Sanchez does such a great job of
Yeah.
tracking that. Always follow that. It's gold. Who they've met with, and what form that took. Was it a formal interview? Was it just a meeting? What have you? For the formal interviews, the thing that I like to look at is what position where. So who are they talking to? Who do they like? So one of the players they like is Oladejo, the converted linebacker edge from UCLA. Where does he go? 99. Okay. Is that the only edge they're going to look at? If so, they would pass on edge at 11. And so there's these pieces. You put this jigsaw puzzle together of who do they meet with and where would that person go, and you can start to piece together what the draft plan could be. Now, it may be that they look at a number of different positions, and I think they will. At 11, I think they'll look at defensive end, defensive tackle, tight end, possibly offensive line, running back, wide receiver, DB, safety. A lot of different positions. What John Lynch said was we want to get a difference maker. And to me, that would eliminate any offensive lineman because there's no left tackle in this draft in the first round. The only left tackle is Simmons from Ohio State, and he's got the patellar tendon injury. I don't think they're going to draft him. They're not going to do that. The other guys are guards or right tackles. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ashley.
Is that the same injury Drake Jackson?
Yeah.
Dealt with?
And Weston Richburg, and it ended Richburg's career, and it looks like it's going to end Drake's. So I don't think that they're going to take Simmons, but they did meet with him. But they met with every offensive lineman that, in theory, could play tackle that's in the first round. So I think that's just a due diligence move. But apparently one of the interviews that went really well was with Will Campbell from LSU. He's the top-rated lineman in the draft, and he's known for having an exceptional football IQ. And I think that's why the conversation went so well, is he really knows his football. And then that's part of it. But will he be there at 11? Probably not. He could go as early as 4 and probably as late as 9. I don't think he'll last to 11. But if he does, that's somebody they'll look at. And I think the two linemen they'll look at will be Will Campbell and Armand Membu. Those are the two guys they could pick if they go offensive line. I don't think they will, though.
And that's the guy that you said the Cowboys took him off the board altogether, right? Because they don't believe that.
Yeah, Shamar Stewart. They thought that he tested so well that he'll go top 10. And right now in the mock that I'm working on now, I've got him going to the Jets because I think that Aaron Glenn will look at him and say, I can turn him into an impact defensive end.
Okay.
And Glenn with the defensive background, I think that he would want to tinker with Stewart. That's where I think he'll end up going. But Stewart could fall to 10. The other guy that tested so well was James Pierce from Tennessee. But apparently the character concerns on him are through the roof. He has the worst character flag of anybody in the draft. There are rumors coming out of Indy that he might not even get picked in the first 2 rounds. I find that hard to believe. I think that he would probably drop to like 32, and then Howie Roseman would say, thank you very much, and take him. But apparently the character problems with him in terms of his fights with coaches where they think he's uncoachable and a diva and has a big ego, and he had problems with authority in both in terms of coaching staff and when he got arrested for reckless driving and resisted arrest and gave some attitude. There's a lot of red flags on him for character stuff that apparently, according to the rumors in Indy, are going to drop him out of the first round, which is shocking because here's the guy that ran this incredible 40 time.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, he's one of the most physically gifted players in the draft, and he's not going to get taken in the first. But apparently the character concerns are that big on him. If they are, then the Niners will pass. So who are the edges that the Niners could look at 11? Shamar Stewart, if he drops that far, and Michael Williams, the young defensive end from Georgia. Javon Walker, the linebacker edge from Georgia, is another one they could look at. If I had to say which one of those drops, it's probably Walker because the league hasn't figured out where to put him. but it could also be Williams, and I think Michael Williams is somebody they would consider strongly.
The with and are those really quickly because I want to go back. I think it was a training staff guy from the Tennessee um team said that the character concerns were like BS. So when I first heard of it, I thought maybe that was a way to get his draft stock to fall. But is that it's proven that he does have issues?
There's a lot of reporting on it. I don't know which side to agree with or not. It's
Got
impossible to know from here.
it.
What's
More than
going on
just
in
football.
Knoxville, we don't know. But there's one school of thought that says he's got a problem with authority, period. He's a diva and he doesn't take
I don't know
coaching well.
how coachable that it like you have to we have to consider we talked about this when we talked about Jalen Carter and the Eagles.
Yeah,
Are the
same
49ers
thing.
the correct team to bring on a guy like that? I'm not very sure.
Right. But Philadelphia was willing, and now Jalen Carter is one of the best defensive tackles in the league. So
Yeah. See,
that's the risk you have to take.
those guys
But the other school of thought, quickly, sorry, the other school of thought on Pierce is that the people in Tennessee aren't that good to begin with, and he's just reacting to bad people. That's
okay.
the opposite side of the equation. That's the argument. So it'll come down to what does he do in interviews? Does he sell teams on it? Based on what he said at the podium in Indy, he's exceptionally confident. He said, "I'm coming here to prove things," and that's in character for him as far as what his makeup is. But people can say, does he love football? Will he take the coaching because he needs it? He has to do body work on his upper body and his lower body. He needs to be stronger because he can have problems disengaging and finishing. So he needs to do some work there, and he needs to add to his pass rushing skills. They're a little bit raw right now. They need to be more refined. So if he's going to succeed in the league, he needs to add weight and he needs to add technique. And if teams are questioning whether he's willing to do either one, then that's why he might drop.
Got it. And then two other guys that I've obviously just heard their names a lot in relation to not just the 49ers, but just with them moving up everyone's draft boards. And you wrote about them when it comes to the D tackles, Mason Graham, and then also Walter Nolan. Uh, both of them didn't perform at the combine. They're going to perform at the pro days. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, yeah. Graham has a shoulder injury he's still recovering from. Nolan has some knick-knack injuries that he didn't want to compete. The problem for Graham is that his arms measured really short. He had 32-inch arms, 9 1/8 inch hands, which are small. So, I wouldn't necessarily call him T-Rex, but that hurts his stock to have arms that short.
Okay.
And he might drop. Right now, he's projected to go to Jacksonville at 5, and their biggest need is D tackle. And you can question the measurements all you want. Look at the game tape; he's still getting it done. Now, I think that there can be an over-analysis of some of the measurements at Indy. There are some absolutes. I think they mainly apply to offensive linemen and defensive backs in secondary, not so much everybody else. So, we'll see how it goes for him. But Graham could fall. If he does, I think the Niners would take him at 11. Walter Nolan, he came into Indy and his approach was off from me anyway. He said, I want to be a versatile player. I want to play inside outside. That's the last thing the Niners wanted to hear. They want to hear, I'm going to power up so that I can be a pure defensive tackle and a two-way threat as a pass rusher and a run stopper. That's what they want. They want him to add 20 pounds, power up, and be a force inside. And
Okay.
Nolan is saying, no, I want to play inside outside. And so if that's what you want to be, bye. Yeah, and that's too
Why
bad because
why is he
I
making
think
that
that Nolan is one of the better players in the draft. But
yeah.
if that's what he wants to be, that eliminates him from Niner consideration, in my opinion.
Do you know why he's making that decision?
No, he didn't say, but he was all fired up about it. He thinks that it markets him, but from a Niner perspective,
Takes him
that's
out
an
off the
instant
board.
turnoff for them because
Yeah.
their question would be, and Grant has pointed this out, so have some others. He doesn't have the weight to handle being in the wide 9 where he's got the gap responsibility. He has to hold his gap. If he's still playing at 293 because he wants to play inside outside, he can't hold the gap, and he would not be a player that they could play on base downs. You're not going to draft a designated pass rusher with the 11th pick, so he'd be gone.
Yeah. Um Really quickly, I like that. I like this. Complacency is poison, and it seems we've been poisoned when talking about the 49ers. I agree with that. That was a
Yeah.
poetic way to say it, but I had to bring that one up. Um,
Well
do
said,
you think
Julie.
Big
Agree.
Ram will be long gone by 11? You agree with that?
Probably, but because he has the 32 arms, that's going to be an issue. It'll come
Okay,
down to how well does he perform at his pro day at Michigan, and
got
if he tests well, then all of those issues will be gone. They'll just say that, well, he may have short arms, but he still gets it done. And so it's all going to be on his pro day. If he does well, then he'll go to Jacksonville at 5. If he doesn't, then it's possible that he could drop to 11 and the Niners would take him there.
Okay. And then a guy that you wrote when and everyone, I really encourage that you check out Tom's article. He writes down, he maps it out in a way that I feel like was really digestible for me. But you talked about ascending players, and one of them you said in the future, the 49ers drill short shuffle, he ran a very quick one. Um, do you wanna talk about him a little bit? I found that interesting because
Yeah.
I was looking at
Donovan
players like
Ezaraku. Yeah,
yeah,
he's an edge from Boston College, and he did exceptionally well in the short shuttle. And I call that the future 49er drill because 4 of the players they drafted last year did really well in their position groups in that drill. And the Niners
for
historically
them.
have drafted offensive linemen based on that drill. So
Got it.
that's the drill for them. And
That's what they care about.
yeah, him running 419 as an edge is crazy. Is by comparison, you look at it and say, okay, Ricky Pearsall last year ran 405. Ezaraku as an edge ran
Wide
419.
receivers.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So I think that given how much importance the Niners place on that specific drill, Ezaraku is somebody that's now on their radar. The problem is that he's late first, early second. How do you get to him? They would need to trade up from 43. But now that they have a fifth rounder, maybe they'll be more willing to deal some of their
Combine some of
picks in
their
the third
assets.
and the fourth. I don't know. We'll see. But
Okay.
Ezraku is somebody that just based on that test alone, I'm sure that the Niners will say, "Whoa, look at that." Doesn't
Maybe
mean they'll take him, but it means that he's somebody they have to look at.
I have a question. I don't know if you have an answer to this, but it was something I was thinking when John Lynch was talking about Christian McCaffrey. There's been so many reports that McCaffrey is 100% healthy and he's ready to
Yeah,
go. And so Jennifer Lee Chan was kind of like, do you anticipate that Christian McCaffrey is going to be fully ready to start the offseason program? He's going to be there for the whole thing. And John Lynch, like, really halted that question and basically said he hopes he's going to be a part of it or a part of some of the off-season programming. He won't be there to start. And they have to make sure to pull Christian McCaffrey back because he'll, push himself when he's not ready to go.
yeah,
And then when we're talking about all the money that they're spending, if they were to put a second round tender on Jordan Mason, they'd be paying a lot for him. While
5.
also, I mean, they can't move off of Chris McCaffrey. All his money's guaranteed. So I am questioning if they're really going to pay both McCaffrey and Mason. But if McCaffrey can't go and they move off of Mason, because another team will get him if they don't put a second round tender on him, he'll be somewhere else. Do you think that they're going to be drafting a running back?
Guaranteed.
And what?
Guaranteed. They will be.
Yeah, yeah.
This is a loaded running back class. Kyle is, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
rubbing
he's
his hands
excited.
together. Can't wait. Yeah, it's this running back class. They're probably going to have to let Mason go because the cap situation is such that they can't keep him.
Yeah.
If you've only got $15 million left after getting rid of Debo, are you going to spend 5 of the 15 on Jordan Mason? Probably not. So
Those
they
decisions
could be letting him go, and I think that it's a lock that Kyle will take a running back. It's just a question of where. I think the back that he would want most isn't Ashton Genty at 11. It would be Travion Henderson from Ohio State, but he's in the 20s in the first round. How do you do that? You'd have to trade down for him. Everybody that wants to trade down wants to then use that pick to get an offensive lineman. Kyle would use it to get Travion Henderson. So you have to always adjust for the Kyle factor in all of this. I don't Cam Scattaboo, no. No. The answer to replacing Juice is tight end 2. And so that's where they can look at Tyler Warren Colston
Yeah.
Loveland, Mason Taylor, Elijah Arroyo, and Ferguson from Oregon. One of those five is probably going to be a Niner. And it's
Okay.
just a question of what do you do. Warren could be, Matt Mayoko's talked up this of Mayoko saying that Warren
Yeah.
is definitely a consideration at 11. He's talked him up for about a month now, really.
Yeah.
And Kyle and John saying that we want a difference maker. That could be Warren. Is you need to resolve your red zone issues. And Tyler Warren, 17 red zone touchdowns in 2 years. He's a monster in the red zone. And as
49ers need help.
Mayoko Right. And as Mayoko pointed out, if you have a tight end two system, then you can force a defense to guess and create a mismatch. Either you've got a tight end with a linebacker, or you've got two tight ends and they're packing in a nickel defense, and now you can run on them. So with 12 personnel, it creates mismatches that Kyle can then take advantage of in his play scheming. And that's why Warren can have a lot of value, not just in the red zone, but just overall. The other factor is that the red zone right now depends too much on CMC. If you add another red zone weapon, that diversifies your attack and it makes you far less dependent on McCaffrey in order to score in the red zone. So I think that's something that Kyle is definitely going to look at. A lot of people say, no, Tyler Warren. I think that Mayoko is right. He's somebody they're going to consider. Doesn't mean they're going to take him, but he's in the mix. He's one of the
Yeah.
players they're going to look at.
I agree. I just don't think that Matt Mayoko comes up with things out of nothing either.
Yeah,
So I would give an extra eye to guys that he's pointing out. And then I do think the 49ers need like I wouldn't be completely opposed to it. So it's not only there's two things. One, there's a need there, so he fills a need. And two, if Matt Mayoko's saying it, I'm gonna put a little extra
yeah,
um, you know,
because he's plugged in.
yeah.
He's not just creating this out of thin air. He's doing this from conversations with people.
Yeah, they need to. Someone said they need to draft him and trade Kittle. I completely disagree. And from
Not with
all
all
of
due.
John Lynch's comments when he talked about Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, obviously Debo before Debo got traded. Kittle was the only guy that I felt like he gave 100%. Like, I want Kittle to be a lifetime 49er. He's going to be around, not just for the entirety of our careers, but he's going to retire with the 49ers. He was the one that he was most sure about. They don't need to trade Kittle. They're going to extend Kittle. But
Right.
that doesn't mean they don't need a tight end. They need a tight end too. And Kittle is getting older. So even if they give him another 3-year deal, or something, they need a guy as Kittle is on, he's descending, as he's getting a little bit less targets. They're going to need a guy who's able to block. They're going to need a guy who's able to catch targets in the red zone. They need, as Tom said, when we talk about guys that they were, open to moving off of, John Lynch made no commitments to Kyle Juszczyk. So instead of having a fullback, having two tight ends on the field, they've
Right.
been looking for a second tight end on the other side of Kittle in quite some time. They haven't been able to find one in the later rounds. They got Kittle. To me, that was total luck. If they do get, a player that's going to be with the team for 10 years to come, then it's the right choice. So I'm not
Yeah.
completely against that one.
Yeah. And just
So
to address the point more, the reason they wouldn't trade Kittle is because the value of Warren is 12 personnel, two tight ends.
yeah,
And think of it as Warren replacing Juszczyk. Instead of having that guy in the backfield, you've got him on the front line and lined up in a condensed formation or however else they want to use him. But Warren is also a weapon not just as a tight end, but as a back. He had 3 touchdowns this year running in the red zone. So there's a lot of ways you can use him, and Kyle's fond of being able to deploy people in multiple spots so that the defense has to guess what's going on.
yeah. So I definitely am not opposed to Tyler Warren. I understand what this guy is saying. Baldwin Blues lifetime players is outdated thinking. I mean, Kittle has had two of his best years in his entire career the last 2 years. He's kind of had a resurgence under Brock Purdy. I think Jimmy Garoppolo was throwing a lot of those, for lack of a better word, hospital balls. And we saw George Kittle, he just took a huge beating. I think he also lost some weight. His legs got a little bit skinnier. So yeah, he was dealing with back-to-back injuries. And I know Jimmy Garoppolo was his good friend, but I think career longevity wise, moving off of him has been great for Kittle. I do hope he's targeted more in the red zone. He's one of their big body players and he can score. So I hope he's utilized more, especially now that Debo's not on the team. But I'm also realistic. I know that that Kittle is getting older.
Yeah.
I'm just not opposed to having him on the field and kind of utilizing him as much as you can now, and then slowly transitioning to him getting a little less targets, the tight end two becoming the tight end one, him becoming the tight end two until he retires.
Right.
So,
And you also take advantage of everything that Kittle has learned that he can then mentor
yeah.
for Warren
And
and
Kelsey was going
accelerate
to be
his
a great.
development. Yeah. So I think that that's a possibility. Corey's saying that Colston Loveland is better. He is, but Kyle is thinking now. There is no horizon for Kyle. It's now. And the now tight end is Warren because he's 15 pounds heavier. So you get the better inline blocker.
Blocking.
And he's more of a weapon in the red zone, which is what they need. And he can run. You know, Loveland is the better tight end. He's faster. He's younger. He's the future pick. You know, if you want to do that, you can. But for what the reasons that Kyle would take Tyler Warren are based on now. Red zone, inline, weapon. And those are things that Colston Loveland doesn't deliver at the same level. And therefore, Warren over Loveland. But in a vacuum, would I take Loveland over Warren? Yes. Would Kyle? No. And that's the entire point.
It'll be interesting to look at both of those players. I wouldn't be opposed to either of them. And
Sure.
then to ended off kind of here. Julie says that Kittle and Warner are the heartbeat of the team, and I agree. Offensively and defensively, you might say Nick Bosa is the better player, but I think when it comes to the more communal player, I think that's Warner on defense. He's more in charge, where Bosa is more of an independent contractor. She did mention Warner obviously played through it wasn't even fractured, a fully broken ankle
Yeah.
last year. My takeaway was it was kind of interesting when John Lynch alluded to the fact that now Trent Williams is going to be motivated to play and basically hinted that he wasn't motivated to play because he would have had a drop off in his normal performance um because he would have been playing through an ankle. Now, maybe his ankle was horrible. I would believe it. I think he's sprained that ankle like 14 times since he's been on the 49ers
Yeah.
team. Um I want to say with a clean break, it's more likely that you can come back. He just was playing like he could have had surgery earlier and maybe been back sooner, but Fred Warner chose to play through it, which I give him all respect for. She mentioned he did have a little bit of a dip in play, but that's obviously to be expected since he was playing through that injury. Hopefully, he'll be
Yeah.
fully healthy when it comes to next season. But I commend Fred Warner for playing through that and definitely hope he coaches up. And then
Yeah. And just that's the definition of a leader. That's somebody
yeah,
that truly has the ear and the heart of the team. To do
absolutely.
that and make that sacrifice was pretty amazing from Fred.
And like
But it's
Fred
also
Warner
something you
knew,
expect of him because that's the kind of player and person he is.
yes. And Fred Warner knew he wasn't going to live up to Fred Warner's standards, but he knew an 80% me is still better than, the backup, where
Yeah.
apparently the indication that John Lynch gave was that Trent Williams didn't want to be there if he couldn't be 100% Trent Williams, which is a bit disappointing. But I do
Well,
consider
it's who they
Trent
are.
Williams and Nick Bosa to be more independent guys that are very focused on their numbers and being the best of the best when it comes to their position groups. When I see Fred Warner, obviously I think he wants to be the number one linebacker, but really, and he talked about this not at the combine, but was it at the Pro Bowl or something? He recently talked this offseason and he said to start his career, his goal was to be the best linebacker ever. And that he's at the point now after having a kid and stuff, like obviously he wants to play his best, but his number one goal is team success. He wants to win a Super Bowl in his career. He thinks to be in the Hall of Fame and the things that he wants, that actually what he needs now more than individual success is team success, and that is his number one priority. And I think you see that when you hear him talk about coaching up players under him, and when
Yeah.
you see that he's playing through injury. So, yeah,
Yeah. And all credit to him for that. That's what you want to hear from the player that's really considered the heart and soul of the team, the leader of the 49ers is Fred Warner, and he's embracing that role, and more power to him. And he's right. You know, if you want to make it to the Hall of Fame, the best way that he can do that is to win a ring. Whether he can do that here or not, we'll see. But
Yeah.
I commend him for that as his goal, and that does separate him from Trent. Trent is more about, I want to be the best left tackle in history. That's what motivates Trent. So, you know, they're wired differently. You know, I get what Lynch was saying is that Trent only wants to compete when he knows he can be Trent. And so, okay, so be it. But that doesn't really help the team. But that's where we are, and you just have to accept that that's who Trent Williams is, and you're still getting one of the best left tackles of all time.